All right, so we want to do a video here focusing mainly on some things that Tim Snyder said in an interview with Katie Couric. And Tim Snyder is formerly a professor at Yale, now at University of Toronto, left in part because Trump won in 2024, and he had been writing and appearing publicly criticizing Trump and fascism, and he wrote the book on tyranny. I don't know if it's 20 lessons on tyranny or 10. I can't remember. It's a little book, really helpful. We used it once at Still Processing to kind of frame one of our gatherings. So he's an expert on this. He's been following it since Trump came along, and she had an interview with him, and we just found it helpful. Some few things in there that were really, it's sort of like part of what's happening is like people trying to like define and describe things that are happening in real time. That's a really difficult thing to do. He admits that at the beginning, Snyder does admit like you need time, you do need some time, you do need to take breaks from doom scrolling because you need time to like process and try and analyze with in some clear-headed way what's going on and what you're going to do about it. Doom scrolling is obviously easy to do right now. There's a lot of doom. So, and that's something that like I definitely struggle with doing too much. And I know you've mentioned that as well.
Yeah, it's
It's
almost
tricky.
become an addiction. It's so close to becoming an addiction. You find you start scrolling and you feel like, but there's a couple of things about that though. For one thing, there's a ton of really good stuff
Hmm.
in the reels
Definitely.
and the TikTok too. It's just that there's a whole lot of garbage too, and my algorithm seems to pick up these violent movies, like The Equalizer or something
Yeah.
where the good guy is just beating the
Right.
crap out of the bad guys. And I think I'm so I'm wanting to transfer that into real life. And I want to pick who the bad guys are that
Well,
I'm
I think
drawn
it
to it.
means that you're watching them.
Yeah,
So
that's
the more
right.
you watch them, the more they send them to you.
Yeah, but
The
what I'm
algorithm
saying
picks
is,
up
why
on
am
what
I
you like.
watching them? Why am I drawn to them, right? I think it's kind of cathartic to be able
It's
to see
definitely.
the bad guys getting the crap beat out of them.
Hmm. Um, so let's start with a clip. This is the setup is that Katie Couric asked him about Ukraine. She's like, what in the world is with the Trump administration's dislike of the total lack of support of, but also kind of contempt for Ukraine? And I think that Snyder has a really great illustrative of something bigger that he's doing here. So he's just going to start answering that question. What's the deal with Trump, Hegseth, and Ukraine and their contempt? And Vance has been a part of this as well.
You have to start with the fact that these are people who would never take any risk for anything themselves and who believe that all talk of patriotism and all talk of democracy and so on is just for show. Like that we have to start there, right? That that these are people who fundamentally will just tell you what you want to hear in order to get what they want personally. And so for them, the whole idea of democracy, and as I was just saying, even national sovereignty, it's all just a joke, right? It's just a means to an end. And so when they're confronted by, I think this is actually the deep part of the answer. I mean, when they're confronted by others for whom democracy or national sovereignty isn't a joke, when they're confronted by people who would in fact fight for freedom, like not just use words like fight for freedom, but who would in fact do it, when they're confront and are doing it and have been doing it for, as you say, 4.5 years now, they don't really have a way to respond besides scorn and despite and dismissal. That's the only thing they can do because they're in a world where those are all words, like, and it's all like those are just words, and those words are just elements in a game which is designed to make them look tough. But when they're confronted with actual human beings, with actual men and women who are actually taking risks, they're in a way helpless, and they have to get that topic off the table, right? Because they're only comfortable in a world where everybody is venal and everybody's a hypocrite, right? And everybody lies all the time. And so so I think that's the fundamental thing is that it's just really uncomfortable, right? You can't imagine a Hegseth or a Trump visiting Kiev. It's not just that it's not going to happen, it's that it's unimaginable because it's psychically impossible for them. They can't be in that world where people are actually taking real risks for real things, as opposed to just manipulating the rest of us with words, right? They can't be in a place where there is courage. That would be too much for them.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the great ironies of what we're going through is like there's an underlying absurdity to all of it. Like the idea that Trump is a tough alpha male is so ridiculous and absurd, right? For people like us, people who are not in um, the mega cult, it's the opposite from our view, right? Which is what he's describing here. This total cowardice that they have and that they demonstrate has been one of the more difficult things for me. Not just their cowardice, but all of the cowardice that they seem to sort of like attract
Yeah.
somehow. And the reason I bring up absurdity is it's like some of the most pathetic losers I've ever seen are running our government. And they're so obviously that pathetic losers, really weak, broken men mostly. And that other people see them as these strong alpha protectors. It's just, it's so upside down. Um, that's been really hard for me
Yeah.
to watch. And then to see other people like in my life and around, sort of
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
perimeter, in my local community, in
Yeah.
my country, political scene, in the business world, just the law firms at the beginning of the second term that gave in all the people who came at to the inauguration and are willing to bow to Trump. It's just been disappointing isn't quite it's sometimes enraging,
Yeah.
to be honest, to me,
Yeah.
to see all this cowardice to such obviously
Yeah.
pathetic people.
I think most of us really don't know what real risk is. I mean, I've been just doing an experiment where I've been asking people, and I wrote a little bit about this on my Substack. I've been asking people, just people in my life, people around me. I mean, not in a way of gotcha or anything like that, just out of curiosity, genuine curiosity. And I mean that. Um, what's the greatest risk they ever took in their life? And most of the people I'm around are in my tribe, so they're like me. They're around my age or a little bit younger, or they're friends that are connected to you and me through still processing. And when I ask that question, what's the biggest risk you ever took in your life? It's really surprised me how they hesitate. They don't know how to answer. And I thought about that for myself. I don't know that I've ever taken any really great risk that was going to cost me my life. Or, I mean, I've left some jobs without another job. I mean, that felt risky at the time, but really thinking back, I was so employable at those times that I never doubted that I'd had a job, not for a second
Mm,
that I think I would be without a job. So I think a lot of us don't even know what the word risk
yeah.
means.
It's like a muscle we've never used.
That's how
So
I
it's
yeah,
really, really weak. That muscle is just, it doesn't, right? So when we really need it, right
right.
now, we really need like maximum courage,
Yeah,
moral courage, I would say.
yeah,
I mean, in our circles, and then even in the United States, in our political circles, it's just filled with mostly privileged people who've lived pretty privileged lives, who don't really know, haven't really used that risk muscle at all. I mean, our political class is filled with people who were already very privileged before they became part of the political class, they
Yeah.
just don't know risk.
Yeah. And most of us are in places where um, risk is really seen as foolish. It's more seen as reckless.
Yeah, well,
So people
definitely.
will say, I mean, because I've said that to you before. You and I have
Right.
had this conversation 100 times. You
Sure.
know,
Right.
I've said there's one thing risk and there's one thing being reckless, but and you go right on the edge of that. But
Yeah, sort of by nature, not by
yeah,
even maybe necessarily by choice, but it sometimes it feels like it,
yeah,
I
you
don't
push
know.
up to the edge of that all the time. So that's
Yeah,
one of the reasons we have that conversation as your dad.
right.
I'm always kind of cautioning you not to step over the line to recklessness.
Yeah.
And I think you do that honestly. I think you walk that line pretty well. But we're in a culture where there's a game to be played if you're going to climb the ladder, if you're going to be
Mhm.
successful. It doesn't matter what profession we're talking about. There's a game to be played, a performance that you have to, a role, a performance you have to do. And I don't
Hmm.
think we realize the value of risk or how risk isn't as risky as we think. I think that's
Yeah.
a biggie, Josh, because I've seen you take risks and I've taken risks in my own life too, but I've seen you take risks. And what I'm learning from watching you is that, you know, not as, not as, there's some freedom in being willing
Yeah. Well, I
to
think
risk
some
it.
of it is like over the last 10 years, I've been using that muscle with some consistent, like pushing as much as I felt like I could or was safe to do. So I am, and I can just say like I am more and more comfortable with it all the time. Now I don't have like I have a safety net of family, right? And my partner has a good job that I don't have to worry about. So admittedly,
Yeah.
that's part of what allows me to risk. But I will say the more you risk, I think um, at a minimum, I think the better you feel about yourself as a
Yeah.
person because you're
Yeah.
living more into what it really is a felt sense. You're living into a felt sense of what's true and what's good and what needs to be done right now. And that is very fulfilling to live that way in its own kind of way, right? That it's very fulfilling and it's very unfulfilling to live with fear and inauthentically. I think a lot of people would say that. The fear is that the authenticity really just affects you possibly economically,
No.
and then maybe relationally as
Yeah, it's
well.
about money, awfully about money. But I'll say too that
I mean, we're
one
such
of
a
the things,
money-driven culture, and we'll come
yeah,
back
we
to
are a
that.
money-driven culture. There's no doubt about it. I'll acknowledge that for myself as well. But I think too, going forward, what I heard from Snyder and in this, even in this little clip, there's an underlying philosophy that he has about finding people who are willing to risk. And if you're not willing to risk yourself,
Hmm.
at least support those who are. And I think he's saying, look, a lot of us are, adverse to risk,
Sure. I
but
think naturally most of us
yep,
are.
there are those who aren't. And now I'm talking about politics.
Hmm.
I mean, we weren't willing to back Bernie Sanders, who was taking the big risk in 2016.
Hmm.
We weren't willing to
And we had another
support.
chance in
Yeah,
2020, actually, and we didn't do it then
that's
either.
right.
We went with the safe choice of Biden. And some of that was orchestrated by people I admire, like Barack Obama was a part
Right.
of
Right.
trying to get Bernie out of the race and have Biden be the nominee. And then when Biden won, everybody was like, see, we did the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, gosh, 6 years later, it doesn't look that way at all.
Right. And well, if you go back to Hillary's running in 2016,
Yeah,
that was
very
Barack Obama.
conventional.
That was Barack
Very con
Obama too.
it was. And it was a
He talked,
super conventional choice. Like it showed very little imagination for what was needed, what was the next phase of what Obama was trying to do. It wasn't Hillary.
no,
It just was not Hillary. It
no,
couldn't have been more
no,
obvious, really.
no,
I mean, he ran his whole
no.
campaign in 2008 on being like, we can't have the same old people doing the same old things. And then he does 8 years and is like, well, never mind. Let's have one of those same old people.
Yeah.
And yeah, such a huge mistake. Um, Anything else on that you want to say about
Now, let's go to
political
the next
stuff?
clip.
I just have one other thing I want to say about
Okay,
this
good.
one. And this is he says at the end of it, I have it down here, two things. He says they're only comfortable, he's talking about Hegseth and Trump,
Yeah,
they're only comfortable in a world where everybody is venal and everybody's a hypocrite. And then he says at the and they can't take real risks for real things. The only thing they can do is really manipulate the rest of us with words. And um, I think that some aspects of religion need to hear that as well, because much of Christianity has this way of saying having a very negative view of humanity.
yeah,
And it's like that view, that negative view of humanity is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because then what they do is they look at the rest of the world constantly with suspicion because they think everybody is inherently bad. Um, and then so I think it's important to have a more positive anthropology, to assume better in people. And I think that that would too become somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like it seems so odd that Christians would follow somebody like Donald Trump. I think one of the keys is that he views humanity negatively. He thinks you always have to like win every negotiation, right? And the fruit of that somewhat is from Christianity, where that is a key component of it. And then just the words part, right? The
yeah,
um, instead of taking actual risks, you just manipulate with words. That's a painful one when I think about the Protestant church, especially. We're so focused on words. We're so focused on pretty words. Sundays are about often somebody giving us a really pretty speech, and that's enough for us, right? Um,
I did it
I
for a
think
long
those are just
time.
places where people need to think about what they're actually contributing
Yeah,
to the cause.
yeah,
Um, so those are just two things I wanted to highlight there.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, the setup to this one is pretty simple. Katie Couric just is like, are people paying attention and realizing what's happening, do you think? And this was his answer.
So one has to start by recognizing that there are a fair number of Americans who would be very happy to live under an authoritarian regime. And I think one has to start from that because if we start from, I mean, first of all, it's true. But secondly, if we go along with the kind of normal cliche that Americans love freedom and so on, then we end up convincing ourselves that whatever happens, it must be freedom. It's the same problem with democracy. You know, if we convince ourselves that the U.S. is a democracy, then whatever happens, we kind of convince ourselves that somehow this is within the overall framework of a democracy somehow. But a lot of Americans don't want democracy, and a lot of Americans don't like freedom. A lot of Americans would like to be told what to do. I mean, maybe a quarter or so. And that's Trump's hardcore. Like that's the line below which his support will never go. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that there are a lot of people who are indifferent to the political system. So long as they believe they're going to make lots of money from whatever the transition is. And that's the problem we have with radical wealth inequality and with oligarchy. We have a lot of people towards the top of our current system who just don't care. I mean, they would be fine with democracy if democracy allowed them to do whatever they want. But it turns out that having a kind of half-dead henchman in the White House is better for them in terms of getting what they want, and so they're in favor of that.
So what
Half
jumps
dead
out at you
henchman,
first here?
half dead henchman. Just
Hmm. It's a
makes
great
me,
line. I mean,
makes me
it's
laugh.
also correct.
It's so good,
It's correct.
so descriptive.
Yeah. I
Makes me
think
laugh.
one of the ironies I think that people don't expect that's surprising for fascism in the United States, and he says it in here. He said some people don't want democracy, some people don't want freedom, some people want to be told what to do. Um, and that is, well, I mean, one of our existential fears, like one of the fears that psychologists have said is just inherent to existing as a human being, that we all feel to some extent is freedom.
Yeah.
Because the idea is like total freedom is can feel very chaotic, unsettling, unmoored, right? No way to guide, no compass, right? That's, I think, where freedom can be an existential fear for people. That
Yeah.
is kind of surprising. And so they look at somebody like Trump and they're like, he's somewhat like a God, kind of
Yeah.
the same way that they might look at God and say, like, God tells me what to do and what's right and what's good, and my pastor, right? And that, or whatever your religion is. And Trump is like that. He's a figure like that who's like, I'll protect you, I'll figure it out, I'm strong, right? And more people are just attracted to that than I imagined.
I think one of the other problems is that one of the authoritative tools in Christianity is the Bible, and you can manipulate that thing really easily, and you can weaponize that thing really easily. And I think one of the reasons people love the Bible so much and love to quote the Bible so much is they can control the Bible.
Hmm.
And I mean the whole idea of whether it's native spirituality or Christianity with the Great Spirit and native spirituality and the Holy Spirit, whatever that meant by that, is that you can't control those things.
Yeah.
You talk about strengthening your internals. You talk about that all the time about,
Hmm.
finding internal authority instead of external authority. And one of the things that I've thought a lot about listening to you talk about that and appreciate about that is, yeah, the Bible is an external authority,
Hmm.
and we're used to those. God is an external authority. Jesus is an external authority.
The church,
Oh, the church is
tradition,
an external. The
past,
past,
your pastor, yeah.
uh, the Donald Trump, others like him, and I think there's really something powerful in the whole mystic kind of uh, way of thinking about finding that internal compass that, you say it better than I do.
Yeah. I
Riffed on that for just a minute.
yeah, I think that um part of the reason deconstruction is so hard is you are undoing these ideologies that were an external authority for you. They
Yeah,
created this structure that you then counted on for meaning, for purpose, for truth, for morality, right? This is part of what Nietzsche said is a part of the death of God is that when that falls apart, um, well, what do you do then? And I think what feels natural to people is find another external authority, or create a different kind of just a slightly different form of Christianity, but then still give in to the demands of that new kind of Christianity that you created, as opposed to reconstructing yourself,
yeah,
understanding internally what matters to you and why, and learning to trust that. And um, it's it's hard.
yeah,
And at that step, a lot of people get afraid,
yeah,
right? And then they say it's easier to fall back
yeah,
into what I know well and to just go back to these external authorities instead of taking the time and sitting with the discomfort of learning internally what matters to you and then finding some confidence about that in relationship with other people and using all kinds of sources of knowledge to do that. And part of it is trying to be honest about reality, about what this is that we're living in, right? Letting other sources of knowledge
yeah,
inform for you what it is, so that you're trying at least to base your morality and your sense of self in lived reality as it is.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that's super, super crucial. But I think ironically, it's the conservative side talks the most, I think, about freedom and liberty. But just naturally, they are the least free, the least committed to liberty. Whereas on the more liberal side, because we're way more suspicious of external authority than the conservative side is, that work is done more on the liberal side. Um, and you see it in like, for example, like the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, like you see them taking responsibility and being like, these are the things we believe in, these are the things we'd like to see for the future. And some of them sound crazy to people, right? But at least they're trying to articulate a vision for the future um, that comports with their values. And they're being sort of bold with some of these ideas. And you just don't see that on the other side really at all at this point.
Right.
We can't continue in this way and get a good future,
Right.
essentially. We need people to accept their freedom,
Yeah. That's
I
really
think.
helpful. That's helpful, Josh. Thanks for that.
Money is also in there.
Oh, yeah.
We shouldn't forget that.
Well, and
Um,
what's ironic about that is, again, I mean, people have said this 100 times, so I don't have to dwell on it. But I mean, if there was one thing Jesus was particularly vehement about was the danger of wealth
mhm.
and money.
Yeah.
And yet this is and people know it and people say it, but we really don't know how to live differently.
Yeah. We
All the measurements. I mean,
all
I
the
remember
measurements.
once, a quick story, when I was in development going to a home of a multimillionaire. I mean, so much money his great grandchildren won't spend it all, right?
Hmm.
And I was asking him for, I don't remember what, $10,000. I mean, they have a right to say, no, it's not that, for a
Hmm.
project we were doing. And he was like, hedging, no, that's a lot. I can't afford that and all of that. And I'm sitting there, you're a multimillionaire. What do you mean? Tell me you don't want to do it. Do anything but tell me you can't afford it. Well, he said no. And his wife walked me to the door. And we're standing at the door. And she says, and I won't say his name, she says, he believes the one who dies with the most money won. That's what
Hmm.
she said to me.
Interesting. Yeah. Uh, the yeah, the sickness around money. Um, Obviously, part of it is the worship of wealth. That's how Trump even becomes a public figure in any way. Elon Musk, same thing, just worship of a wealthy person who is extremely racist. This is well known that he's extremely racist. He grew up in South Africa, apartheid South Africa, Elon Musk, at least
On the
part of
wrong
his,
side, on the wrong
yeah,
side.
at least part of his life. And his father is extremely racist, but you can get away with so much if you're wealthy. And we just sort of know this about our country. And I think, again, that's a place where there needs to be a really heavy push against this radical wealth
Yeah.
inequality.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, ironically, right? Like, who's been on this beat for the longest? Who's been talking about the millionaires and billionaires? Who built an entire movement on it is Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
You can go back to Occupy Wall Street under Barack Obama. That's, I think, 2010 maybe.
That was Bernie.
Bernie's on there. He's there. He's talking about how we have to get money out of politics. Even you can even go back to John McCain.
Yeah. I
John
remember
McCain
John.
wanted for his whole career trying to get money out of politics.
Yep.
So there was a time when both sides saw this as an issue, and it's gone now. But yeah, it's painful.
Well,
It's
I,
painful to see how big of a motivating factor it is for people, and then to see how much it changes people
Yeah.
is pretty painful to watch.
Well, again, the discussion that Sally and I, Mom and I have, we just had it yesterday, was how much is enough?
Hmm.
You know, how much do we want to give away this year? Looking at what we have, how much we want to give away. I mean, I think these are things that everyone, no matter whether they're religious or not, could be wrestling with. How much do I really need to be? Because more doesn't make you happier. And yeah, so that's all I have to say is I think one of the keys is trying to determine how much is enough.
All right, we'll play the last clip here. She's sort of asking him, like, what do the Democrats need to do?
It's not our job to be the spectators or the referees in all of this, and because it's not the Democratic Party's job to save the republic, it's everybody's job to save the republic. And so the way I think about the Democrats is that it's our job to help them to see that the radical is the pragmatic and the pragmatic is the radical. That if they want to win elections and actually stay in power, they're going to have to be more radical than they've been. You're asking about a figure, and I mean, I think the kind of figure you want is someone who, in demeanor and in record, is someone who has shown that she or he can build things and is reliable, but who in aims and intentions is someone who has a vision of constructing things, creating things. And I think it has to be somebody who actually talks about things the way they are.
So one of the things is for me, is the talking about things the way they are.
Yeah, I can see why you like this clip.
Yeah,
This clip is right in your wheelhouse. This
yeah,
is where you're at, right?
definitely. And um the talking about things the way they are is such a sort of banal statement. Like it sounds just simple, like what do you mean? But um we have gone through so many cycles of Democrats um speaking so weakly and being so careful and trying to find the right position on everything so that people won't be mad about anything that they believe. This idea of like trying to like manufacture the all the right policies has made them look like they just have no convictions at all. Like they just don't stand for anything at all. I think this was Kamala's biggest problem was she just looked like a person who would take any position that was needed in order to win,
Yeah.
as opposed to having a sort of radical vision that she was willing to fight for. Oh, it's not popular? I don't care. I'm going to fight for it because it's right or it's good or because it would do all these good things for so many people, right? Like Medicare for all, for example. Like telling the truth. Um, it sounds like a banal, simple thing, but all over the place in our communities, in our country, that is not happening because telling the truth might get you in trouble, um, might affect your money and relationships, right? We're getting a lot of people masking, pretending, just getting by, being quiet, keeping to themselves, staying out of other people. Like we're just getting this totally closing down from people. And it's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working, I guess
Well,
is what I would say.
we're bombarded every day. So I can see where people are beat down. I feel that way myself. I mean, I really have to charge myself up to write a post or to, not this. This I was looking forward to. This is energizing. So yeah, I get it why they're that way, but he said it, and it's going to take us all. I mean, it's going to take a coalition. It's
Yeah.
going to take people who are willing to say, yeah, we're not going to agree on everything, but we've got to have more government. We've got to have better government. We got to have honest people. And if we have those things, we can turn this ship around. I
Hmm.
just, I just hope it's not too late. That's
Hmm.
all I would say is that I just hope it's not too late.
Well, part of the difficulty is that he said, right, is that we actually need more democracy, not
Absolutely.
less, right? But democracy has felt chaotic to people now for a while because they think what Donald Trump is doing is democracy, but of course it isn't.
Right.
So you have to convince people that more democracy will actually get them results. Um, and we've seen this our whole lives, right? This is the fruit of 40 some years of work by the Republican Party, starting with Reagan, to tell us that government is ineffectual and bad and takes all your money and doesn't do anything good with it and just gives it out to other people who are lazy, right? Like, so now, yeah, people don't believe in government. The one thing that could uh, change their lives and quickly and in dramatic ways, they've been told is ineffectual and terrible, and they shouldn't ever believe in it. And so you have to do this dual thing of saying, yes, government can be effective, and then fight for radical changes to government. And then you have to actually affect them in some
Yeah,
way so that
that's
people
right.
can see that it can actually happen. It's a huge, huge task. But one thing on the radical and pragmatic that's been interesting just to witness is that I've been following the Bulwark, which is a new media organization from Never Trumpers. And it's been helpful because they stretch me because they're not lifelong liberals, right? So when I listen to other lifelong liberals, I'm probably not getting stretched quite as much as I am from listening to some people who are formerly Republicans. I mean, Bill Kristol's in part of the Bulwark, and he was part of the Iraq War, designing the Iraq War in the George W. Bush administration. So I mean, it's quite a coalition to be a part of. But I've watched them over the last, let's say, six years or so. I hear them now say, yeah, we're going to need national health care. Like that's going to have to be a part of what the next Democratic candidate for president is fighting for, which of course started, I mean, you could say it started with 2008 with Obama and Hillary. They were talking about it, and you get Obamacare, but then you get, Bernie Sanders coming and saying it's not enough. We need Medicare for all. And they're basically saying like that thing that we used to think is radical is now the pragmatic.
Right.
And the
Right.
same thing they say about ICE. Like abolish ICE used to just be one of those woke, crazy things that was talked about in the 2020 presidential campaign. And now so many people at the Bulwark openly are like, we got to yeah, ICE has to be totally abolished. There's nothing, it's not a salvageable organization. So again, something they once saw as radical, they now see as the pragmatic view that Democrats need to take. And Israel's the last thing I've watched them switch on. I watched, these are these are neoconservatives, some of them. So like Bush to Iraq war people who've, and some of them Jewish. Bill Kristol is also Jewish, who believed in Israel and strongly their whole lives, and now they're saying like this country is highly problematic, maybe not a good ally, and has committed war crimes, like dramatic shifts. And so they are also like, yeah, it's gonna be tough, and I agree with this for the next presidential candidate amongst Democrats to be pro-Israel in really any way except like the existence. Yeah, you want Israel to continue to exist, but that there are going to have to be major criticisms of Israel from the next Democratic nominee. So again, something that would have been deemed radical, they now see as utterly pragmatic. Um, so I don't know what more evidence we need if former Republicans are moving on these issues. I don't see why the rest of us shouldn't and should be fighting for it in whatever ways we can, wherever we can, right? Part of it is making the conditions such that the Democratic nominee has to take these positions.
Yeah.
That's part of what Snyder is saying is we all save the republic by convincing and showing everybody in every way that we can that the next Democratic nominee and the next Democratic uh, administration needs to radically change our health system, abolish ICE, maybe abolish Department of Homeland Security, perhaps add more states, right? Like Puerto Rico and DC, just all these major changes to our system that need to happen in order to essentially save the country, save democracy.
Yeah, and get the
Give
money out of politics. That's still,
the
in
biggie.
my opinion, that's the biggest one is we have to get the money out of politics so that, we can have good people who aren't necessarily multi-millionaires or billionaires, but who have what it takes to lead.
Hmm.
To
I think
lead.
this will be an interesting part of it, which is that maybe character
Yeah,
will come back as like the number one thing we look for, as opposed to policy. Maybe that's like the simple answer is to say, like, if you're a person of character, yes, we also have these radical, you know, that we now think are pragmatic ideas, but like number one, no more people of such low, pathetic character. We have in Texas, I mean, just look at that race.
Paxson.
Ken Paxton. I mean, I can't even list all the terrible things about him. There are so many. He's an obvious crook. He's obviously not good to his wife and family. Like this is a person of extremely low character up against somebody who I haven't seen anything rough on James Tallarico. Somebody of extremely high character, and we don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah,
I'm really anxious to see what happens in that race. It'll be one of my test cases, and here in Michigan is the other test case because we have the same thing here.
yeah, we do.
We have somebody of high character and somebody of pretty low character, essentially, in Mike Rogers and Abdul. All right.
It's good, Josh. Thanks.
Thanks.